Thank you so much for joining us for the Q&A for Shorts Program 5. Let me quickly reintroduce our guests. We've got Elizabeth, Director of MISTRESS DISPELLER, joining us from Los Angeles. Welcome. We've got Mitch, Director of Play It Safe, joining us from the UK. We've got Suzannah, Director of All Sit, joining us from Qatar. We've got Karolina, Director of Green, joining us from Belgium. And we've got Urška, Director of Granny's Sexual Life, joining us from Slovenia. So quite a international crew with us today. Thank you all for joining us. I know it's different times for everybody. So I'm curious, how long did it take you to make your films, from coming up with the idea to submitting it to festivals, you know, the whole range? And which part of the process was the most difficult for you and why? And we'll start with you, Urška.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, so we were working on this film for 2 years, from the beginning of the script and everything, and then financing. But we started working actually at the time on March 2020, you know, at the time when the Corona started. So that was actually very challenging because we had to change some things. We were supposed to shoot also elderly ladies, but at the time wasn't possible. So then I decided to use a lot of archives for that part. But you know, everything kind of brings something new. So that was also very good and welcome.
Wow, so the pandemic kind of changed the look and feel of your film. That's,
yeah.
Wow. Well, it looked great. It was great. So, you know, happy accidents, I guess. Karolina.
Actually, pandemic was the reason I made this film. At this time, I was working on another project which required a lot of traveling. And yes, and I just decided that I want to make another movie. Movie inspired by my neighborhood, but by views from my windows, basically. And I discovered so much beauty in my closest neighborhood. I discovered this whole microcosmos of pretty ugly places, but they were so full of life, and I really wanted to show this. And it took me around 4 to 5 months from the very beginning to the end.
Wow, I love that. So it was kind of the observation from your window that inspired it. That's, yes. I can see that now. That's really cool. Thank you. Suzannah.
Yeah, for us, it took a couple of years, 1 year writing and 1 year looking for funding and so on. What I thought would be, luckily we finished production literally a couple of weeks before the pandemic hit. So we were able to spend that isolation time actually editing and doing post-production. But what I thought would be the most difficult part of making this film is making a film in Sudan, because we do not have an established film industry. And so you kind of have to reinvent the wheel every time you want to make a film. But there are consummate professionals who work in television and commercials. So we were able to actually work with highly professional, actually the best that Sudan has to offer, which was really a nice surprise for us.
Wow, well, that is good. Thank you. Mitch?
Yeah, so had a pretty similar path to Suzannah. Essentially the pre-production and everything. Well, by the time we finished production, it was right at the start of COVID, the lockdown sequence. So, and then I wrote the film several years ago, maybe 6 or something like that years ago, and it just always was a story I couldn't get round to doing for whatever reason. And then the most difficult part of the production was the casting. Getting the role for Jonathan was like quite pivotal for the rest of the project. So it took that was the kind of most intensive process, making sure we had the right talent for that.
Yeah, he's incredible. So how long did the casting take? How many people did you see?
Well, we saw a bunch of people. I can't really remember, to be honest, but he was always my kind of number one choice. And yeah, essentially we just had to free up a few things and move the schedule in order to accommodate. But yeah, as you can see, it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Elizabeth.
Thanks for having us all here. I had read about the phenomenon of mistress dispelling, who are these people that you can hire to help sort of dispel a mistress if you're struggling with infidelity in your relationship, in China years ago in the New Yorker. And I had wanted to make a film about it then, but couldn't figure out how to do that in a nonfiction context. But when the pandemic hit, I went back to Hong Kong, where I'm from, to be closer to family and friends. And I decided to go to China where I had to quarantine for 2 weeks before going in, but to explore sort of the world of private detectives, love hospitals, and mistress dispellers there. And I guess the hardest part was in the journalist's article, there were, you know, many different figures who sounded like they had really exciting jobs, but the one person that appears in the film ultimately, and all her clients, she was the only one who genuinely had like a lot of work and clients who were so close with her that they were willing to be on camera too, which, you know, we had the mistress, the husband, and the wife all appear in the film, which obviously would be a challenge if you didn't have a close relationship with them.
Yeah, it's a crazy intimate like relationship that you had to get in order to get this very personal footage. So yeah, I don't know how you did it, but good job.
Mistress Dispeller.
Yeah, exactly.
Relationship with them.
She was amazing. So Suzannah touched upon this a little bit. It's something that I think, you know, a lot of filmmakers don't get an opportunity to talk about this, but, you know, I believe all of your films were made in different countries. What is the filmmaking scene like there? What kind of support do you have, if any? And do you have any advice for people trying to make films there? Let's start with Urška again.
Yeah, so, well, Slovenia is actually in a deep shit right now because with the corona crisis, also very, very conservative government came, and a little bit fascist also, and there's a lot of hate speech towards culture and artists, and the year 2020 was especially hard because they blocked film funding. It was just crazy. So it feels like I'm living in a different country than I did before. And now it's for 2 years. I think elections will be next year. So I hope, you know, things will change. So at the time, it's really not that easy. But otherwise, we also have very small film budget for the whole country. So it's not easy. You have to be, I don't know, have great ideas and also have some luck. And yeah, I don't have a clue actually. Right now, it's a very depressing situation. So yeah. Hopefully, I know it's happening all around the world, this conservative wing taking over, and I hope it will not last for too long.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that making your films is revolutionary in a lot of ways. So we're really happy that it worked out for your film so that we could show it. So thank you. Karolina.
Yes, my film was a student film, so I got a lot of support and funding from Łódź Film School. But the situation in Poland is pretty similar to the one in Slovenia. So the government is very, very conservative, and I'm at this point, culture is drowning a little bit. I'm also worried about funding in the future, but luckily, as an independent animator, I can create films with a really low budget. So that's my, I really like this freedom, you know, but it's also not the best, not ideal in Poland.
Yeah, it would still be nice to have the support, obviously. So
Yes, yes.
thank you so much. And then Suzannah, we actually had filmmaker Djukićz Kuka, who is a Sudanese filmmaker. He's very outspoken about kind of the film scene in Sudan. So what was the experience like for you? And do you have any advice for other people trying to make films?
I love how you mentioned Djukićz Kuka, because he's so passionate about building the Sudanese film industry. And there's literally quite a handful of Sudanese filmmakers that we know who are actively working. And many of us have to get our funding from outside Sudan. There is no funding in Sudan whatsoever. Sudan is going through turmoil at the moment. It's literally trying to stand up for itself politically and economically. So there is no extra money to be given to anyone. I was able to get a production grant from the Doha Film Institute, and I'm based in Qatar at the moment, which is really the catalyst for getting this film made. But there's a lot of pressure from people on the government to really invest in the arts. And so this is our calling cards, you know, here are our films, look what we can do, look at our representation of Sudanese people in the world, and this can only be a positive thing. Yeah,
Thank you. And Mitch, what was it like for you?
Yeah, fortunately, the UK is really supportive to up and coming filmmakers, and there's like a bunch of government funds that you can apply to films. We didn't actually use one for this, for Play It Safe. As a result of these funds, essentially they're super competitive, and it can be quite a long process to go through that funding process. So it just came about where I was able to self-fund alongside the production company. And we decided to go after it together. But aside from that, I think for filmmakers in the UK, aside from the government funds, I think it's quite easy to approach other production companies, people who work in the commercial space, the music video space, and these kinds of companies are always looking for interesting stories to tell. So it's a really supportive industry, and the community as well, the individual filmmakers, the OPs, art directors, and so on. There's a super supportive community that will tend to get behind stories they believe in.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And Elizabeth, what was it like for you?
I can't speak to the experiences of filmmakers based in China, but being based in the US, I also, like Mitch, feel fortunate because there is a lot of funding for filmmaking. It's very competitive, but this film was produced under the Concordia Studio Fellowship that supports diverse voices in nonfiction filmmaking. And that's how this film was produced.
Well, thank you. Okay, so I'm thinking that all of you guys obviously are passionate about being filmmakers. That's why you made your projects, especially for many of you in such difficult situations. What is it that makes you want to be a filmmaker? What makes you stay in this field? We'll start with you again, Urška.
Well, I think I think it's about making people feel, and making, trying to how do you say, raise the feeling of empathy towards other people, and just making people think and question. That, I think, is the most that we as filmmakers can do.
Yeah, I think that, that makes sense. I mean, do you feel like, if things get a lot harder in your country, that you will still fight to make films, or at some point is it kind of too much to you know, fight against?
I don't know. I think we have to fight it, definitely. But we are also fortunate because it's European Union and we can have a lot of co-production. So I did this film with French co-production, and they also support a lot of foreign filmmakers. And yes, definitely we need to fight it. We can't just, you know, leave it like it is. I think the struggle is ongoing all the time. For every right that you get, you have to, you know, struggle and keep it. It's not how do you say the word? My English is not.
It's okay. Yeah, like it's not guaranteed. It's not safe. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Karolina. What makes you tick? Why are you a filmmaker?
Why am I a filmmaker? Because it just makes me happy. I really love to animate. I love drawing things and seeing how they become alive. I love movement. It's just pure passion, and also it's freedom for me. And I think films are freedom. They give other people access to your inner world, to ideas, to empathy, to like they allow you to see a tiny bit of world of other person or other being, because I'm also really interested in wildlife documentaries, and I'm actually planning on making one, which is super far away from animation. But yes, I feel that like this gives me energy and power and this sense of freedom and connection to other people.
That's so important. That's good to hear. Thank you. Suzannah.
I guess there's just so much more you can convey with an audiovisual medium. So I'm also a writer, and no one ever read my stories, but you know, you can show a film to a much wider audience, which means that you can convey a story and a message to a much wider audience. And it's also a question of representation. So Sudanese people do not see themselves on screen, which means that they're always looking to others and they're always looking at stories of others. And we're just south of Egypt, which is the premier Middle East film industry. So I think it's about time that we had our own stories and we saw ourselves on screen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously representation is super important. And, you know, I think in a lot of parts of the world, a lot of the media you get is kind of exported from the US or exported from like white European countries for the most part. So yeah, it's amazing to be able to see yourself on, you know, on the screen. So thank you. Mitch.
Yeah, it's a difficult question, and I think everyone's my answer would be like a culmination of what's come before. Essentially, I think definitely, yeah, filmmaking or cinema is a tool for empathy, and I believe strongly in creating empathy for characters and stories that aren't given as much shine as they should do, essentially, and hopefully creating a genuinely engaging, compelling and entertaining experience, because I think that's where we're able to kind of do a lot of there's a lot of power there when you can entertain an audience, but hopefully leave them with something more. So yeah, that would be my kind of inspiration for filmmaking.
Well, yeah, with your film, it's one of those things where, you know, you're entertaining people and then you totally catch them off guard, and you definitely leave people with something to think about. So good job, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Elizabeth.
I think my motivations are similar to a lot of the panelists here, and I think I, from a young age, derived a lot of pleasure from watching films. And so I want to make films that also give people pleasure and also have that feeling of stimulation of the mind and an opening up of the mind, where you think about the world in a different way and you look at details of the world in a different way. Like I had just made this film Stray that was following stray dogs around Istanbul and seeing what they hear and see about the world. And it was such an expansive experience for me. And now as I'm turning Mistress Dispeller into a feature-length documentary now. And I'm excited as someone who grew up in Hong Kong and sees a lot of documentaries that portray China in a light that can be alienating, I feel. And I hope that this project that's centered around love and sort of the emotions that we have that are probably very similar across continents, that it can be a bridging force rather than a sort of dividing one. Sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah. And okay, so you brought up my next question just real quick. It's our last question of the Q&A, but do you have anything in the pipeline? Is there anything in your head that you want to develop next? Where are we going to see you in the future? So Urška.
Yeah, so I'm just actually developing my first feature film. It's called Little Trouble Girls. And I'm finishing the Torino film lab right now, preparing to make this pitch in the last one. So I need to make it really good, and then need to finance the film and probably shoot it around the beginning of the year 23. So still a long way to go, but it's my first feature. So I'm excited and a little scared also at the same time.
Congratulations. That's a huge feat to try to tackle. So we'll be excited to see it when it's ready. So thank you.
Thank you.
Karolina.
As I said before, I dream about making a wildlife documentary focused on city animals. I think it will be a short film, but I think I will start working on this project next year. Right now, I'm in Belgium, helping a very talented animation director, Ada Gouverneur, on her project. And yeah, I'm just taking a break from my own projects and working on something else. And it's also very, very nice and creative. So yeah.
Yeah, you learn so much helping other people with their projects, so it's like being in school. So it's a good thing to do. Yeah. Suzannah.
Yeah, so just like Elizabeth, my short Sit is a proof of concept for my first feature, which is called Cotton Queen. And I had wanted to make the feature before the short, but obviously somebody is not going to throw money at someone who doesn't have any experience of filmmaking in Sudan or a first feature. So yes, I am not done with this story. And in the short, Nafisa, the main character, does not speak, whereas she tells you exactly what she wants in the feature.
Wow. Okay, that's going to be great. Mitch.
Yeah, I've just started development for my first feature as well. It's called The Last Day of Year 11. It's got nothing to do with this story actually, but yes, some of the themes are similar.
Wonderful. Well, that's going to be great. And Elizabeth, so like, what are we going to see in the feature that you weren't able to explore in the short? Like, what are you excited to show people?
In the short, you sort of just see one day in the life of the Mistress Dispeller. And I think with the feature, I want to sort of approach it like with a Rashomon-like approach, where you're, with every chapter and every character, your sympathies, you find your sympathies shifting in unexpected directions. And you find that every person, no matter how many faults they might have, that they have sort of causes and reasons behind it. And I want the film to explore issues of class and gender within the context of a marriage that is sort of crumbling and trying to repair itself, and going more into the private lives of each of the players who are involved in a case.
Wow, that's going to be great. I think this conversation that we've been having really kind of shines a light on how important filmmaking can be. So it's really exciting to hear that you are all working on new projects and that we'll get to see more of your voice out in the world. So thank you so much. And I regret to say it, but our time is over. So I want to thank all of you for being here today with us. Thank you. And thanks to you, our audience. So to our audience, please tell your friends to watch all these amazing short films. They're available throughout the festival, both online and in person. You can go online and kind of check to see when those are playing. And we'd love to hear from you on social media, #AFI Fest. Join us for more great films and ways to interact with us at fest.afi.com. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to the filmmakers.
Thank you.